Hi, this is James Headley, and welcome back to the Living in Savannah channel. In today's episode, I'm going to provide a primer on flood insurance. For those buyers who are interested in purchasing here in the Low Country, this is a topic that I get a lot of questions about. And even when I don't, it's something that I believe every buyer should get a good handle on, both from a risk mitigation and financial planning perspective, as well as for overall budgeting purposes. As always, I do appreciate you tuning in, and please do keep subscribing, sharing, and liking. And with that, let's get into the top 5 things that I think you should know about flood insurance before purchasing in the landings or in the Low Country more generally. First, you should consider purchasing flood insurance even if it isn't required by your lender or if you don't live in a high flood risk area. With very few exceptions, just about every home and community in the country is eligible to purchase flood insurance via the federal government's National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. And given that the majority of homeowners' policies do not cover damage from flood insurance, adding on a flood policy may be a very smart financial decision. Knowing that in an average year, 40% of NFIP claims actually come from outside of designated special flood hazard areas might also tip the scales for you a bit if you're on the edge of buying or not. Think about Ian's impact on Central Florida, far from the coast, as just one vivid recent example of how this can come into play. Number 2, what is a special flood hazard area, or SFHA? As I just noted, an average of 40% of NFIP claims come from outside of these SFHAs. So that, of course, means that about 60% come from within special flood hazard areas. SFHAs, say that fast, are those areas that are identified to have the highest risk for floods, as you might guess. These are zones that begin with the letters A or V on flood insurance risk rate maps, which you can check at floodsmart.gov. Again, that's floodsmart.gov. Here at the landings, we basically have a mix of SFHAs with AE designations and non-SFHA properties with X or X500 designations. Brings us to number 3, and that's where can I buy flood insurance and how should I shop for it? Since the NFIP is a federal program, the good news is that there is no need to shop for a flood insurance policy. Simply talk with your homeowner's insurance provider about adding flood insurance, and they will be able to provide you with the standard policy options and premiums that will be consistent across all providers. The only difference is going to be in terms of what your deductibles look like. That's the only variable that's going to come into play. Brings us to number 4, and that's what's the story with elevation certificates. Now, you may have heard about the elevation certificate, or EC. When FEMA transitioned to the current NFIP version 2.0, the universal requirement to have an elevation certificate to get a flood insurance policy was actually removed. That said, getting an elevation certificate may lower a homeowner's flood insurance premium if it shows, for example, that your home's lowest level floor is higher than the elevation that floodwaters are estimated to have a 1% chance of reaching or exceeding in any given year, which is the common metric to determine your flood risk. And number 5, how much can I expect to pay for flood insurance? The big question, obviously, what's it going to cost me? So while this is a question that's best left to an insurance agent, I can tell you that if you can assume or carry over an existing flood insurance policy from the seller, you will most likely achieve some savings versus a new policy from scratch. Now, just for example, a recent flood policy in the AE zone here in the landings was just under $2,200 for a new policy versus a roughly $800 annual premium by continuing the policy. So quite a bit of a difference there. And I said I'd give you 5, but I'm going to throw in a bonus 6th one here. And that is, the question comes up of, won't I be covered by FEMA disaster relief in the event of a flood caused by a natural disaster? Just my opinion here, but there are so many reasons not to count on FEMA as a backstop versus purchasing a flood policy. Federal disaster assistance comes in the form of low-interest disaster loans primarily that recipients must repay with interest, and it's only available when there is an official presidential disaster declaration for federal disaster assistance. And unfortunately, floods are not always declared as such. Oh, I know this isn't the sexiest or most fun of topics, but thinking about flood insurance is important as you consider living in a coastal paradise like the Landings and the Lowcountry more generally. So I hope this is helpful, and definitely look forward to answering any questions that you have about flood insurance and real estate in the area more broadly. Again, thanks for tuning in, liking, subscribing, and sharing, and I hope to hear from you soon. And worst case, I will see you in the next episode. Take care.